turbo four-cylinders are quickly becoming the most popular engine choice for new car manufacturers around the globe. But back in the 60s and 70s, turbocharging was still very much in its infancy in terms of its production vehicle applications. And that turbo four-cylinder combination in America might as well have been blasphemous given the heyday of the V8 era. No one in their right mind would order a turbo inline-four Camaro back then if Chevy made one. The Vega, though, did come with an inline four-cylinder under the hood, which, although anemic in stock form, someone did see potential in this little four-banger as the host for a turbocharger. And that someone was Don Yenko. And he would go on to take what he learned from building the Yenko Stinger Corvairs and applied it to creating his ultimate compact American performance car with a turbo strap to it. And that car was the insanely rare Yenko Stinger Vega. Now, the Yenko Stinger Vega was actually one of two crazy period Vegas built, the other one of which being the Motion Vega, which at this point over 1 million of you have now seen my video on, so thank you so much for watching that. But the most fascinating part about these Vegas, being the Yenko Stinger Vega and the Motion Vega, is that these cars could not have been more different from each other, even though they shared the same donor car. The Motion Vega was a sledgehammer. It was a brute force attempt to leverage the lightweight Econobox Vega and turn it into an X-Factor on the drag strip, while the Yenko Stinger Vega was a scalpel. It was designed to be balanced and to shave seconds off lap times, not on the strings, but with points. Now, you know Don Yenko in the famed Yenko chapter as the one who built some of the baddest big block Camaros, Chevelles, and Rovers around. Yenko is a household name to you on the East Coast back in the day, and those Yenko side stripes told a story all by themselves. But besides just the drag racing scene, Don Yenko had other ambitions. See, back in the mid-1960s when the Corvair was all the rage, Don Yenko and his team worked to turn this American platform into a high-performance beast akin to a Porsche 911. They created what was called the Yenko Stinger Corvair, which was a performance-built Corvair that featured a variety of upgraded engine stages, suspension overhauls, and more to help turn it into a serious competitor. Yenko built over 100 of these Corvairs for homologation purposes so that they could race them in period SCCA racing classes. But when the Corvair was discontinued, this meant the eventual demise of the Yenko Stinger as well, at least until the Vega came out. See, with the Vega weighing in at just under 2,300 pounds, that put this car in featherweight territory, which was obviously very advantageous for a future competition car. Couple that with the fact that compared to many of the other cheap domestic economy cars of the period, the Vega had the best factory suspension geometry, which made it the only real choice if someone wanted to build a handling-focused version of a lightweight American economy car. These Vegas would essentially be the successor to the Corvair Stingers, and as such would be built with Class D SCCA racing in mind. This seemed like a logical progression for Yenko's racing efforts, and the Vega was the platform to do it with. There was just one thing holding it back: its anemic stock motor. In standard trim, the Vega's 140 cubic inch inline four made just 90 horsepower in 1971, and this car was straight up not going to win any races with that under the hood. Forced induction seemed like the perfect way to increase the output of the Vega's four-cylinder without upsetting the weight balance of the car. So Yenko made the decision to slap a turbocharger on the Vega, which in turn helped bump power up to 155 horsepower thanks to the added boost and hotter cam in their test engine, according to a Motor Trend article from 1971. These cars were good for a 15.5-second quarter-mile time at 85 miles per hour, which wasn't fast, but again, this was a more handling-focused car. The initial test car proved that the turbocharged Vega concept could work, and the next step was to get it approved by the EPA for sale through the Yenko dealer network, and ideally to have Chevy deliver the cars with the turbos installed. Don Yenko, being who he was, had some pull with the higher-ups at General Motors. He approached them and let them know what he was planning to do with the Vega from a performance perspective. Don told Chevy flat out that he wanted to have them build a turbocharged version of the Vega's inline four to use. Now, Chevy was absolutely not going to do that, given the engineering cost and resources it would take to do so, plus all the EPA hoops they would have to jump through. Considering that Yenko hadn't yet solved the problem of passing the Turbo 4 through the EPA's emission testing requirements. The compromise that Chevy made with Yenko was that Chevrolet would provide an overhauled set of pistons on the fleet of Vegas that Yenko ordered so that those engines would be better poised to support the boost that Yenko was planning on pushing through them. Yenko would go on to order an initial batch of 200 cars from Chevrolet for delivery with the new forged aluminum pistons fitted on them for 1971, with a second order for another 200 cars being placed the following year. And about 50 of these cars actually ended up also being the Vega wagon variant, which is pretty neat. All of the Vegas delivered to Yenko had the following factory options: a specially built 9C2 code engine, an M20 4-speed manual, up to a 336 Positrack rear end, and the Vega GT suspension package. Once these cars were shipped to Yenko, they would then outfit them with a few other goodies, such as the signature Yenko straight package, aluminum Yenko valve covers, and even traction bars if you wanted to reduce rear wheel hop. Now notice I did not mention the turbo. This was where the problem that effectively killed the Yenko Stinger Vega bore its ugly head. Yenko, although building some of the baddest cars around, at the end of the day, in the eyes of the law, was just another Chevrolet dealership, and the cars that were sold through other dealers were no exception. And at this point in the 70s, the EPA was getting in everyone's business, and Yenko wasn't excluded. As an official dealership by 72 and 73, Yenko wasn't really allowed to make any modifications to cars that could change their factory emissions. And the Turbo 4 was unable to get its EPA certification passed. Without Chevy's factory support for the Turbo 4 banger, this meant that Yenko couldn't deliver the turbocharged cars to the customers turnkey. Anything that could have tampered with these vehicles' factory emissions would need to now be installed by the customer. Parts like a 4-barrel carburetor, a new intake manifold, headers, and even the turbo itself, which would greatly wake the inline 4 up, were now all marketed by Yenko as performance parts that you could add on. They were no longer standard. So the Yenko Stinger Vegas, which started off as these turbocharged SCCA competition homologation cars, were now just neutered to what are essentially slightly better Vega GTs with Yenko stripes on them. No one knows exactly how many turbochargers were even ordered from the aftermarket to be fitted onto these cars either, so it's a bit of a mystery. Just like the mystery of how many of these cars are left on the road today. They built 400 Yenko Vegas, with an overwhelming majority of them being just the naturally aspirated cars. But according to the very limited information that exists online today, there are maybe at most like 15 or 20 of these cars left that are accounted for. Now, if after hearing the full story of this car, you might be thinking, well, that was a colossal failure. And, well, yes, the world never got the turbocharged Yenko Vega that it deserved. But this Turbo Vega did help on the R&D side for Yenko's final car, which was the super rare Yenko Turbo Z Camaro, which launched years later. So it wasn't all for nothing. And if you want to read more about the very niche specifics and minute details of the Yenko Vega Stingers, I will attach a link below in the description to Ed Kanin's website, copo.com, where he has compiled a wealth of information on these cars that should supplement this video very nicely. But as always, thank you all for watching another one of our rare